And we're live. Welcome to the S&B Network. My name is Boogie Bentley, joined by my co-host of ComicCast, my wingman. I would probably say the Robert Gibson to my Ricky Morton. Adam Wade Adams, what's up, buddy?
Oh wow, no, trust me, Robert Gibson has way more knowledge. Like in the back at wrestling shows, like that man could just round off reversals and moves and stuff like it's brushing your teeth. So, but I appreciate it. I will take the compliment. I'm trying to learn to take compliments in this new year.
I don't know if it was a compliment. I'm the Ricky Morton of the tag team. That was the point. But
we're then sell, baby, sell.
We're also joined by the publisher and founder of Alterna Comics, Peter Simeti. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's been a while, man. I actually went back and looked today. It was November of 2017 was the last time that you came on with Chip Reese and Kelly Williams to talk about Metaphase.
Wow. Another life.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that long. I really didn't realize it was that long. But
time flies.
It does. It does, man. You got a lot going on. You're a busy guy.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So I guess, I mean, most of the people that listen to ComicCast and are subscribed to this channel already know who you are and who Alterna Comics is. But anybody that doesn't know, tell them a little bit about Alterna Comics.
Okay, sure. So Alterna Comics, we've been around for, I think this is our 14th year. And we started out putting out just graphic novels and things like that for about 10, 11 years. And the past 3 or 4, we've been putting out single issues in newsprint. And they're not only are they awesome, but they're very affordable. The average price is about $1.50 right now. And then we've got these giants out, 80 to 100 pages pretty much, for $4.99. And you can see that they're in newsprint. For those that don't know, the covers are glossy. You see that light reflecting. And then the interiors, no light reflection. And they're great. And they smell great too. Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that smell, that newsprint smell.
Well, I like create our own too.
Remember the commercial you made with everyone sniffing the comics?
Oh yeah. That was a fun time filming that. That's at my local comic shop, Stairway to Heaven, in Newington, New Hampshire, and wonderful shop. Since that time too, shortly after the commercial, I think we did that about 2 years ago. They expanded. So the store is about twice the size now. It's just a great shop, and they carry so many different comics.
It's always great to hear when a shop gets to expand.
Yeah, you don't hear that too
bigger. Yeah. Have you ever thought about getting into? Have you ever looked into doing like scratch and sniff, like portions in the page? Since smelling the book was such a big thing, did you ever think, could I ever make a scratch and sniff comic?
The newsprint smells so good, it would just ruin it.
Yeah, come on, Adam.
I'm sure everything would. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Fair enough.
I like the newsprint. I like obviously the price point. That's what I always talk about. Good stories for a price point. And Donnie Cates talked about this a while back and it's funny he's talking about it when his Absolute Carnage was like $8. But he talked about comic books they're meant to be read, not to be scared of touching and handling. And that's why I like the price point. I don't need all that stuff. I want a story, man. I just want stories. That's why I like the newsprint, bringing the price point down.
Oh yeah, and a lot of times too, people go, "Well, they're on newsprint. Does that mean that they're gonna just fall apart eventually?" These things are still gonna outlive all of us, and especially I've got comics from the 60s and 70s that are still in great shape, but these in particular, especially with the modern archival techniques of bags and boards, and they're all acid free and stuff like that. These things are going to last forever. As far as, people saying, oh, they're going to fall apart. They're so brittle. They're just going to turn into dust. Absolutely not. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, you just got to you read them. Just, any comic book person knows, you take care of them when you get them. You don't leave them in a humid, I don't know, swampy area and expect them to live forever.
Well, the thing is too is
that's with any comic. That's with any comic.
You can't really do this with modern comics anymore. You can't really do the roll them up type of thing. And the thing is that because the newsprint is so versatile and it's so flexible, there's actually no damage that the book incurs when you just do something like this for a relatively short amount of time. Whereas if you try that with the comics nowadays, they have thicker cardstock covers sometimes, or they have just thicker paper sometimes too. You're going to get bends, creases, folds, all that kind of stuff. So these things, I've dropped a couple sometimes, and I'm like, oh no, they fell, and then they're perfectly fine.
I've done that. I've been in the car, had to hit the brakes. All the comics came out of the bag, hit the floor, and then I guess if anybody looked over, I would have like a 10-minute rage fest of every curse word I knew, because I knew like something bent in there and I was going to drive me insane.
Yeah, well, not with Alterna.
What made
Exactly.
what made you start the venture with Alterna? I don't know that we've ever asked you. When you came on back forever ago, like I said, in November of 2017, it was more Chip was coming on, and then you kind of just came on with him, and then Kelly showed up, and it was more about promoting Metaphase. We didn't really get into that story of what made you go into publishing. That's way different than just creating, which you've also done too, obviously.
Yeah, as far as Alterna goes, it was more or less just my own imprint for the first year or so. It was just something where I came up with a name that to me sounded better than having something like Simeti Studios or some other kind of self-serving sort of name. Something that just sounded a little bit cooler. And I went with that. And it was just with my own stuff, and I was very new to doing everything in comics at the time, and I didn't feel like I was ready to get my stuff out to a publisher. I just figured I'll just put my stuff out for the time being, keep doing that, and we'll see where it goes. To me, Alterna, when I first started it, was meant to more be a stepping stone even for me, and then eventually I'd move on, and Alterna really wouldn't go anywhere. I didn't even think I'd be publishing anybody else's stuff. It was just sort of my own alias in a way. But 6 to 8 months into it, I started getting people submitting books and going, hey, I'm having trouble getting into here, getting into there. Can you take a look? And of course, they were all kind of ran the gamut from some of them were pretty good to some of them were, they need some more time too. But after a while, I started seeing more and more really good, high quality stories with great art and solid writing, and they all had the same kind of story. It was really difficult to get in. They didn't know anybody, all this other kind of stuff, because sometimes it's who you know, not what you know, unfortunately. And this was around, I'd say 2006, 2007. And I figured, all right, what's the worst that can happen? I get another person or two on board, and we just kind of all do our own little thing, and we just keep at it. And it was still that mentality of I'm not really going to stick with this in the long term. This is still just something that once I get good enough and confident enough with my own stuff, I'll move on. Mm-hmm. But the ball kept rolling from there, and we kept getting more and more people. And we went from print on demand eventually to getting distribution. And we did graphic novels for such a long time. We got graphic novel distribution as well. And there were always, with any business too that you start, there's always ups and downs. And the first 5 years were pretty difficult, learning the ins and outs of everything. And but after that point, it was a lot smoother. And especially after the 10-year mark, it was even more smoother than the first 10 definitely were. And I wanted to get single issues out there, especially because I found that a lot of the graphic novel market was getting flooded. Everyone thought we were kind of crazy when we were just going to do graphic novels and distribution and not do single issues and then graphic novels. But it just didn't work for the timeline of all these guys. They have different jobs. They have stuff going on, multiple different books they're working on. They can't commit to a schedule of a monthly or a bi-monthly at that point in time. And we weren't big enough or known enough that I would feel confident to say, yeah, quit your day job and just work on Alterna books.
Right.
I don't think many indie publishers at this point, unfortunately, are confident enough to tell people that. So it made sense to just do, just put your graphic novel out, once a year or whatever. And for the most part, people were okay with that. And that was fine. And then when the single issue stuff, we wanted to put that out, like I said, it was mostly because the graphic novel market got kind of flooded and sales were plateauing and in some cases declining. And this was across the board, not just at Alterna. So I figured we have to get single issues out there. I don't want to get $5 single issues out there. I don't like paying $5 for single issues. I don't want someone to pay that kind of price from the books we put out. And newsprint made a lot of sense. I wanted to put the books out in newsprint anyway for a very long time. I always say this whenever I talk about this whole story. Every year, I would look for a newsprint printer. And I would do a quick search online, and I would always come across the same thing. It would be me from a forum, I think it was Digital Webbing, asking around if anyone knew of a newsprint printer for comic books. It would be my thread over and over again every year.
It's like you're crawling into a time machine, right?
Yeah. Until around, I'd say 2015, 2016, I forget at this point. But I was talking to another indie creator. And he was using newsprint as well. He was using actual like newspaper newsprint, very thin kind of stuff, but it was possible. And he pointed me to the right type of printer because we were looking at offset printers the whole time. They don't handle newsprint, anything that thin. We needed a web press printer. And you usually have to print a higher amount. And again, this goes back to the fact that it happened at the right point in time because if we don't gang up all of our print runs at the same time, we really couldn't use a web press printer and utilize that kind of savings. It would be relatively expensive still. But because we have all the books we have now and because of the fact that we could print as many as we do, it makes sense. So finding this kind of printing service really enabled us to cut our print production costs by like a third compared to what it would be with a standard kind of book that you see out there now. And that's why the cover price is the way it is. And that's why they're on newsprint. And I mean, I wouldn't want to put comics out in anything other than newsprint. So it works out for, I think, for everybody.
So it started as this is your way in, right? So do you miss that creative aspect? And, you know, I think it was on a stream you did recently talking about the chair and how that's done. That's a self-contained story. And you told that story and you're done with it. And didn't you have a story in the first Wednesday?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I don't have it right now.
I'm kicking myself for not getting it, but it's sitting over there. But it was so good, and I remember when that came out, I was like, "Tell me, there's going to be more of this." And you're like, "Nope, that's it. That's it." Do you miss that creative aspect now? You're more the business.
Every now and then. I mean, you know, I still have a whole backlog of stories that kick around in my head, and it just kind of, they come and go. Sometimes I end up, you know, you wait around long enough, someone else eventually does that story, even if you don't talk about it. And I've seen that happen here and there. But you can't really think that way in terms of wanting to be so involved as a creator anymore if you want to become a publisher, especially a one-man show, more or less. It takes up a lot of time doing all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. We always compare things to pro wrestling. I guess it's like when a wrestler runs his own professional wrestling show, it's time to, as much as you want to be out there in the spotlight, you kind of have to put on that other hat and do what needs to be done, right? Yeah.
And at this point, though, I mean, you know, early on, I kind of wrestled with it a bit, but I don't really think about it now. I don't have any regrets. I certainly don't. And every single book that comes out, we have so many. Speaking of, it came out on Wednesday. This was the most recent issue. And even this, I get to compile this, which is fun. I get to kind of have fun with that. But I also get to lay out all the cover stuff, like all the layout elements there, the logo, I'm the barcode artist at Alterna.
I like it. I love it came out on a Wednesday. I pull that. I just love all the different stories you get in it. And every time I see Wes Loker on there, I'm like, there's our guy, Wes Loker.
Yeah, he letters, I think, about a third, no, maybe half at this point of all the Alterna titles. It's funny.
The dude is a workhorse, and of course, I always recommend Unit 44 to anybody and everybody.
Great stuff.
And if anybody like, I got your, and I watched all. You're talking about your printing press. I watched those videos of you going through your trials and tribulations of what you got in the stuff that had folds and.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, but I loved it because you had the you had people who love Alterna in the chat saying, "I'll buy it, I'll take that." But I also get your emails, and you had a one thing I saw you had in here, and I want to say if anybody hasn't read it, they need to check this out. It's only $4.99. Trespasser is in here for only.
That is one of my favorite Alterna titles of all time. I've got all the single issues and the trade. It is so good. It's so good.
Yeah, the giants are essentially they're different than what you would see from other companies with their giants. Like this Mighty Mascots giant is essentially the whole entire 3-issue first volume. So it's a complete story arc. Same goes for these are great too. Blood Realm is such a fantastic series from Rob Geronimo. These giants as well. It's a complete story arc, and the same thing will be true for the Trespasser giant, which is going to be $4.99 for the whole 4-issue story arc.
Yeah, Mighty Mascots is good. That's fun. Especially the I forget the name of the team, the Teeth, all the different various mascots, and I think at one point they even combined into a giant mascot,
like a Voltron sort of mecha mascot sort of thing. What I really love about Mighty Mascots too is the art in particular by Ian Warianto and colored by Anton Bandy. It's so drawable. It gets me back to that when I was a kid kind of feel of you see all these panels and you see all these dynamic poses and these characters that are so interesting, and that you might not even read the story when you're a kid, depending what age you are, but the images really just draw you in, and they inspire you to pick up the pencil and start drawing, which is something that a lot of these books, it's great to see them inspire maybe the next generation of creators as well.
And this Tinseltown, is that like that's not a reprint of the first series. That's a new series. New series of Tinseltown. And I picked those the first series up. That was a very interesting story as well. Just great story,
crime noir type of
stuff. Yeah, almost like it almost felt like a crime noir with that. I'm blanking. What was that Jim Carrey movie where he's in the TV show?
Oh, Truman Show.
Truman Show. I kind of got like, to me it felt. That's what it felt like.
Oh, because it's a little bit, at first it's a little bit, you can't make heads or tails of what's real, what's not real.
Right.
And it kind of twists and turns with all the different elements in the story. And I actually got this one. It's right behind me there. That's the first series of Tinseltown. But that's another thing too. We do these books almost like, we call them volumes, but they're kind of also like seasons of a TV show. When you see the next miniseries roll around, it's not a reboot. It's not anything like that. It's continuing. It just provides a nice breathing point between titles, because again, we want to give these guys a little bit of room to create what they want to create.
Yeah. So has there been any rumblings? Because we backed and got the Chair Blu-ray when that came out. Has there been any rumblings about any other properties possibly going to screen?
Yeah, well, you mentioned Trespasser. That got optioned by I believe the co-writer of the Wonder Woman screenplay. So that was about maybe I think 6 months or so ago. It might be longer than that. Time is just not my friend lately. It's like 4 years ago.
That's awesome, because when I read it and Lost in Comics asked, what was that book, Boogie? I need to know where to start. If you want to know where to, this is one of my favorite Alterna books, Trespasser. I highly recommend it, and every time I read it, that's what I say is this needs to be a TV show. It's built so perfect.
It's brilliant. Great.
If I was going to keep gushing, this is another one. This is another one of my favorite Alterna titles that I would highly recommend.
We're continuing that this year as well.
I'll mention one. I don't know if it's still available, Peter. Definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but Mother Russia.
That's another good one.
That one's all done and wrapped up. Yeah, so that one's not continuing as far as I'm aware of. That's not continuing. I guess if it does, maybe Jeff will do it on his own or something like that. But as far as I'm aware, that one's all wrapped up and done, and he's moving on.
Yeah, that was a great story, though.
It's a good story, though. Yeah.
Gomer has a good question in the chat, and I kind of want to piggyback on this. He says if, but it's when you take pitches. What do you look for, and how many do you have to turn away? I'm sure there's a ton.
Okay. Well, I don't take pitches necessarily in terms of, I have an idea for a story. Can you hear me out? Because everyone has an idea. An idea can look like anything. And most likely, I don't want to insult you, but most likely your idea won't look so good. Your idea, if it's like my idea when I started out, it really wasn't that great. If back in the day Pete submitted to Pete today, it would be like, keep at it. You got a couple of years in you that you have to learn how to do this stuff first. But I want to see full blown, give me complete pages. So go to the alternacomics.com site. There's submission guidelines on there. We're very succinct as far as what we're looking for. It's very clear. You want to send in 5 to 8 complete and lettered pages too. And that's something too I find people often overlook is the lettering. The lettering is probably one of the, if you're reading the book, hopefully you are, it's probably the most viewed thing in a comic. And we don't really give it much thought. And that's if it's good. If it's bad lettering, though, it ruins a book. It ruins the art. Mm-hmm. And that's all you can think about is, oh, my God, this lettering is so awful. But that's the unsung hero part of being a solid letterer. Is when you do a great job, usually no one notices.
Right. And that's something I thought was interesting going back to Blood Realm. It's just unique lettering, unique art style. This story is really it's not like my type of story, but because of the artwork was so unique, man, and that, again, that price point, you can stick with the story, and it's cool, man. It's great art, but the lettering layouts are so unique. And Gomer, if you're still in the chat, there's a map, buddy. We always love a good map.
I love maps.
Oh, what is that?
I tell Rob that all the time.
Gomer in the chat. Cartography. That's it. We love some good cartography.
Yeah, it's great.
At ComicCast. Now you've got. Is it starting or has already started? You're doing some print on demand stuff, right?
Yeah, we're doing the printing partnership program. We love alliteration at Alterna.
Alliteration and comics go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, so basically that's people can piggyback onto our print runs and get significant savings. Basically, print on demand costs are rising too. Everything's rising nowadays. When we started off with print on demand, I think we were getting copies for about $1.50 a book, which is that's how much we sell them now. So they've risen at this point. There's some printers out there. It's mostly $2.50, $3, sometimes even more than that per issue. But with the printing partnership program, you can get an 80 cents per book for a 32 pager, black and white or color. And you can get 500 of them. It's a 500 minimum just because we need to do that for the web press. And we're talking about, what is that? It's $400 plus shipping, basically, to get 500 copies of your book. Whereas if you did that, 500 copies at $3 a piece, you're talking about $1,500 and then shipping. And then you have to sell the book for even more. You have to sell it for $5, $6, whatever it is. And we mostly did this because I would have all these sad experiences in Artist Alley. We would be at a show and we'd be doing very well. We'd sell hundreds of issues. And so I'd walk around and I'm like, oh, we're doing great. I love this show. How's it going for you guys? And then I sell them, 10, 15 of them. A lot of people are saying, they only have so much money to spend and then they're kind of moving on. And, it's $5, $6. I wish I could get the price lower. It'd be a constant thing. Because they have to, if you're an indie creator, especially, you have already so many costs to covering the cost of a very expensive print run and then hoping to make your money back. It's going to take a while. But with this, you don't have to put out as much money. And even if you were to sell your book for $2, $3, something like that, it's more affordable for your readers. So this way you can get this book into the hands of people as opposed to just keeping it on your table or in your garage in boxes, let's say. So this was mostly just done as a way to help out the indie community, because when we were starting out, I would have loved to have been a part of something like that.
Is there a minimum print requirement on that?
Yeah, just 500.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's still a great deal. Especially anybody just looking to break in and create their own comic. Low One Bow 2 says, what's been your highest selling single issue so far?
That varies. That varies in so many different ways, but I'll say the past 2 years, our highest single issue seller has been Blood Realm #1.
Wow.
Yeah. That's done pretty good. People really love that one. We went to a third printing, and we're not doing multiple printings anymore for a whole different slew of reasons. But the Giants coming out, and we've got ICYMI as well, so it doesn't really make sense as much to keep going back to print. But that went to 3 printings and has almost sold out of the third at this point. So people have been really enjoying it. And I think what's funny about Blood Realm, something that you mentioned too, is that everyone that tries it, well, not everyone, but most people that try it out, they go, well, the art style looks interesting. I'm gonna give it a shot. And then they read issue 1 and they're like, I really don't know what to make of this, because it's very much like an illustrated book as opposed to a comic book for issue 1. It sets up a lot of the story. It does a lot of that kind of stuff. And then they read issue 2, and then they're sucked in. And for those that, again, this is what Blood Realm looks like. It's very dark, epic, fantasy, horror kind of stuff. And everyone, like I said, that reads issue 2, they're just like, that's it. I'm completely hooked. This is awesome. It's
so unique. The layouts, the art style, the letter, everything about that book makes it stand out. It's just so different. That's what I love about it. Something I want to talk about. Some of the people in the chat were saying, where do I jump in? Where do I start? How do I do this? New to Alterna Comics, they always hear us rambling about it. I want to talk about the AllStar 1-year subscription plan. You got what, less than a week left that you can get in on this and save 10% and get every title for less than $135 in 2020.
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about that.
So you get all 59 single issues. You don't get the Giants. You get a couple of the Giants that are original releases, but you don't get like Blood Realm or Trespasser on there, mostly because people might have the back issues for that. But if you want the Giants, or if you want anything else from Alterna, by becoming an All-Star, you actually get a free shipping coupon code. So anything you order on the site, you will get shipped to you for free with your next bundle. And that even includes international customers too. So if you guys overseas or in Canada, if you guys want to be a part of this, you know, like, okay, shipping is going to cost a mountain. It's going to cost way more than the comics. And you will pay for some shipping up front, but then anything you want, you can get the rest of the Alterna catalog if you want, and it gets shipped to you for free during the course of that year. So it's a really great program we've got going on right now. We've got a whole bunch of subscribers already, which has been fantastic. And but right now, if you sign up, you get 10% off, and you'll still get everything we have coming out this year. Now, if you sign up next week, you're not going to get 10% off, and you miss out on the first bundle. But again, you can just go back in there if you sign up for next month, let's say, or 2-3 months down the road, and use your free shipping coupon code, and then catch up and get all the back issues you missed.
And that's the one-man plan. That's the one-man operation, right? These they place these orders. You're doing all the boxing, the shipping, the whole deal yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, so you get that package, and it's not like Amazon where you wonder who packed this thing. You know who packed this thing.
Yeah, it's me. I'm packing them up, and we pack them with care. We got all sorts of different things. We've got easy fold mailers. We've got stay flat envelopes. We use lots of cardboard and packing material. Anybody knows when they get a box from Alterna, you're going to get about 2 weeks worth of grocery store flyers as packing materials in there. So you see everything that's on sale in my area.
Nice.
And we take a lot of care into it. And if the thing still arrives damaged to you, we replace it the next month and you get all your books anyway. So you never have to worry about, oh man, these arrived. The post office really had some fun playing soccer in the office with this. What can you do for us? Oh, no problem. We'll just ship them to you new. It's okay.
Well, I just dropped the link for that in the chat. And again, that's what was it? 59 comics, 59 comic books. For less than $135. And again, I just dropped that link in the chat. I would encourage you guys to check it out. And I will say I've ordered a lot, and this is going to kind of segue into what I want to talk about next. I've ordered a lot of books through your Etsy store because I couldn't get them in my comic shop for whatever reason.
Oh yeah, back when we had the Etsy store, yeah.
Yeah, I would pull an Alterna title, and I would get the first issue, the second issue, then maybe the third issue may or may not show up. And you were in the chat a couple of weeks ago when I had Clint on, and I was talking to Clint, and that conversation did not go the way I wanted. But you were very active in the chat, and we had a conversation afterwards, and I appreciate you. We had a good conversation, a good private conversation, which I appreciate. But one of the things you said in the chat that really stood out to me was that you wish, because that was a very passionate conversation from two different sides of the fence, but you said you wish more people had the same passion about the poor practices going on in the comic book industry.
Oh yeah, there's so many problems in the industry right now.
So I would love to pick your brain, and because I think a lot of times on this podcast, it's just, we just go to the comic shop, we buy what we want, we read it, and we don't know a lot of that. And I think you have a lot of insider information. So what are some of the things you're talking about when you say that?
Okay, so it's very difficult right now, I think, as we all know, that if it's not on the shelf, it's most likely never going to get into your hands. And we've experienced a lot of that over the past, I'd say, whatever it is since we started coming out with these single issues, 2017, I think. We've lost, I'd say, 15 to 16,000 reorders from Diamond in that time. People that want these books, shops that want these books, they want to get them in. They'll sell out relatively fast, and within like the first week or so at distribution. But that doesn't mean they've sold out at the publisher level. We still have a bunch. And the reason we sell so many direct orders is because of the fact that we're not getting these out to the shops that need them. So that trickles down. And what happens, anyone I think can testify to this, going to any store. If you go to a store multiple times and they consistently do not have the things you want, how many times do you keep going to that store? Especially if you're going to that store for one or two things. Eventually, you're going to go elsewhere. So it's not that we are losing sales necessarily. We are still losing sales, but it's not that we're so much suffering as much as the comic shops are suffering from that, because they lose the customer, they lose the sale, they lose all the other things that customer might have bought. They lose the fact that customer might then go, I want to try out an Alterna title. I want to get this. Can you guys get this in for me? And the shop says, okay, sure. So they put in the order. It's on back order. They're never going to get it. Diamond's never going to give us that reorder. So what happens is that customer, if they do not order from us direct, they never become an Alterna reader. They never get Alterna at their local comic shop. And not just that title or that series, but multiples. Most people that read Alterna are reading several series. We have many customers that are reading every single book we put out. Mm-hmm. One of our biggest and most popular sales on our site store is a new reader that comes in and they order our first issue bundle, and they get every first issue we have in stock. Or they get the mystery grab bag option we have, which is like, I think, less than $10, and you get 10 issues and one of them is signed. Or we've got the almost all bundle, which is every single book that we have in stock, and you get that, I think it's around $100. Every single time we get one of those orders, it's so bittersweet, because that's someone who went to their shop. They didn't have any Alterna there, but if they did, they would have made that $100, $150 sale. They would have made that $35, $40 sale. They would have had a customer that comes in and buys one of every single thing. But because it's so difficult to get these books, it's become a Herculean task for some of these customers. And that's just one of the tiny problems that exists in the industry, because we're not the only publisher dealing with that kind of a thing.
So what's the problem there, though? What is making it so difficult for a comic shop to be able to place an order and a book show up? Like what's the issue? Do you know what the issue is?
I think Diamond is they mostly from this end, it looks like they just really want to handle pre-orders. I don't think they really want to handle the reorder aspect of the business, because I've talked to multiple brand managers over the years. I think we've had 10 in 11 or 12 years. We've been distributed since 2008 with Diamond. So it's almost a new brand manager every year. Currently, this is lovely. We have an interim brand manager. We don't have a dedicated brand manager right now, which means that there's really no one that can represent us. And that's been going on for about 18 months. So that's been very difficult for us to grow in that market right now. And it's been tough too, because I really want to support the comic shops, but Diamond is making it increasingly difficult to do so and survive in this climate at the same time. Now, as far as reorders and things like that go, as far as Diamond goes with a lot of things, there's some things they do really great. A lot of the people that I've had interactions with over the years there have been wonderful people, but some of the policies there are just mind-boggling. And even they don't understand it. Some of the brand managers we've had, they're like, I don't understand. The minimums are set so that, when you have X amount of issues, total issues, we send you a reorder, because we can't send comics. We'll see them stack up, but we can't send anything. So sometimes we've had like 200, 300 of one issue, and we should get that reorder to send that out. And we don't, and it cancels out and automatically in about 4 weeks or so. And we can't do a thing about that. If we send them the comics, and this happened on one occasion very early on when I wasn't aware that they were dead serious on this policy, they threw them all away and they fined us $150. I said, but you guys need them. They're right there. And they're like, look, we don't issue a purchase order. Don't send us anything. I was like, well, then how do we get you to issue us a purchase order? And they said, well, maybe we'll decrease your minimums. And I said, okay, well, decrease the minimums for us. And so they did. But it doesn't seem to stock. The books don't stay there. The books they sell through, and then they don't get them back in. And then this whole kind of thing in the industry, it just keeps on perpetuating. And we're constantly living 2 months ahead. If you're always someone who's pre-ordering, that the books come out generally 2 to 3 months after you pre-order them. But the industry keeps on living in the future like that. So you don't really get to promote what's out right now, because you're too busy promoting what's out in 2 months. And there's no in between, really. And then on top of that, the shops have to constantly scramble to just worry about what are they going to order in that massive phone book called previews, instead of making it nice and easy at this point. I don't understand in the year 2020, where internet ordering, online ordering is so prevalent. It's just everyone does it. And yet Diamond, which, they want to kind of behave like the silent headquarters for the comic industry, can they just please act like it at this point and make a ship to store feature?
I was trying to explain that to my wife before I came down here. I was trying to explain to her the way, and she was like, what? She was mind blown.
Oh yeah.
That a company is in control like that. She could not believe it.
I can say when I'm talking at my LCS, when I'm talking to the owner, when he talks about a such and such book reorder, there's always that tone in his voice, like he does not sound very confident.
Yeah.
And if he's going to get it, and if he does get it, when it'll even be in the shop. And when we record on a Sunday, so I'm just thinking, if I'm there on a Wednesday, I was like, if I can't get it before Sunday, don't reorder it. Don't buy it. Because I need it for Sunday. Usually those are homework issues laid out by Boogie.
Well, and yeah, I mean, but it's a problem when you're talking to two customers, Peter, and it's like you said, when I go to the store and I'm like, okay, I want this Alterna title, and then the first issue shows up, the second issue shows up, and then the third doesn't, and I'm like, well, that's frustrating, but okay, whatever. And then I do it with a different title, and the same thing happens, and then another title, it happens on the second issue. At what point do I stop ordering Alterna comics because of something that is out of your control? And that's why, again, to go back and promote the AllStar 1 year deal, why not do that? That's easier for me. I know why would you not just do that?
Yeah, and we even have the same kind of deal extended to retailers as well. We have maybe 50 to 60 retailers that order from us on a regular basis. just because they don't want to deal with the insanity. And they get all their stuff directly from us. They get it in great shape, because that's sometimes an issue too for shops. And they know if they have a problem, they can just work it out with us direct. Plus, they get a bigger discount when they order direct from us. So everybody benefits from that. So as far as everything goes with Diamond, I think that there's some things they do very well. I think that they'd be in a better position to market themselves more as a premier distributor, and really kind of, I hate to say this in a way too, because it kind of also chops us out of their system. But there's too many publishers and too many comics at Diamond, and it's making it increasingly difficult to not necessarily just compete, but to even make it easy on anyone. Anyone that I talk to at conventions, I'm like, oh, do you use previews to get our comics? Do you know what previews is? Most people don't have a clue what previews is. There's a very big education problem with the system in comics in terms of understanding the whole process involved. Most people think like, oh, well, if it's not at the store, it either sold out or it doesn't exist. And they're not aware that you're seeing the tip of the iceberg at most stores. Unless you're going to like Midtown Comics or some kind of gigantic mega store of comics in a way, which there's only a handful of. They're not going to really carry everything. So you have to let the shop know. You have to help them out and let them know, hey, I'm interested in this book. Can you get it for me? But that also requires making your customers do massive amounts of research and homework, which is ridiculous. There should be an easier system than that. And the system that is easiest is make it easy on the retailers, that when a customer does come in, you can confidently just reorder these titles and get them in, and it doesn't have to go into this weird abyss process where everyone kind of knows it's like 99% of, this isn't going to happen, but we'll try. And that's what retailers do. And I can imagine the frustration that mounts.
What would make things easier is digital, but and I wondered, because I saw your poll on Twitter and on YouTube talking about who reads your titles through Comixology. I hate digital comics. I want the book in my hand. I don't like. And was that your mindset? Like what was that? Poll?
Yeah. Well, we've already pulled about half of our titles from Comixology. The digital sales are really not. They've never really been there. They comprise about 8 to 10% in a good year of what our overall sales are like, no matter what. When it started, right now, same kind of figure. On top of that, it was increasingly disturbing for me to have this conversation with our Comixology rep. This is the third time now, and I still haven't heard back from them. It's been 2 weeks. I let them know there's specifically comic piracy websites that are saying we get this stuff off of Comixology, and if it's not there, we're not going to get it. And I've let them know. I've sent them those links. I've sent them screenshots. I said, look, this is what's going on. Your company is owned by Amazon. All right. So don't tell me that you guys can't do a thing, even on some level at all. And if you can't, and this is just the way it is, it feels very weird dealing with someone that as soon as that thing goes there, that book goes there, it's going to get stolen right off the bat and just put elsewhere. And we specifically didn't put a line or two of books on Comixology for the past year, just to see if these would ever wind up on any kind of piracy site. And every 2-3 months I check, and that line of books is still not there. It's still not on a piracy site. But any book we put up on Comixology is.
Interesting.
And that's the thing too, is that it's such a weird gray area, because I'm aware piracy, especially digital piracy, is never going to really go away. But at the same time, it feels a bit foolish when you look at it and go, well, we're not really making much money on it. And Alterna is creator owned. So if a creator comes to me and they're like, look, I really don't want my book on there. Can you take it down? I'm going to do that. Some of them are like, oh, I'm fine with it. As long as you think it's not going to impact things too much. I was like, it's not going to impact things too much, but we'll keep an eye on it. So that's all we do. And honestly, at this point, I think maybe in a year or so, I wouldn't be surprised if we phased away completely from Comixology.
We get free review copies through Outright Geekery for ComicCast, and I don't even like reading those. I want comics in my hand, but that's just me. That's a personal preference. Low One Bow 2 says, do you see 2020 being Alterna's best year, just like 2019 beat 2018, which beat 2017, etc.?
That's really difficult to say. That's really difficult to say because, and I was talking about this for a while, but 2019 leading into 2020 was going to be a very difficult time period, and not just for Alterna, but for the industry, because we're reaching a point where there's just not enough stores and there's too many books still, and the books are getting more expensive because as we decrease that footprint, we decrease the amount of places you can sell books. What happens to make up for that lost market is you start increasing your cover prices. And as you increase your cover prices, you decrease your readers, and especially your new readers coming on board. You lose that impulse buy. So because of that, it puts a lot of stores either out of business, which many have gone out of business that have not even been public about it. Because at this point, in October, there was 2 to 3 shops every single week that I was aware of that were closing, and they weren't going to make a big splash about it. That's kind of been, that was the 2018 thing. I think a lot of stores were kind of trying to say, hey, look, something's going on in their own little way. And at this point, you hear about one a month or so, but I tell you, there's 10 times the amount for every one you hear. And then there's even more stores that are going, well, we have to diversify what we carry. We have to make sure that we stay afloat, and comics are just not doing it. So they expand into gaming or whatever else too.
Tabletop gaming.
Yeah.
They got to do. My LTS, their Facebook page is usually inundated with more. There's occasional new comic book day post, and then everything else is tabletop gaming
and tabletop events, and trying to get people in the store to do that. And Dwayne's World is the sponsor of this podcast of ComicCast, and man, it's just used to, you went into his shop and there were multiple people there and they're talking about comics, and now you're there and it's 1 or 2 people in the comic section on New Comic Book Day talking, and everybody else is in the gaming section or Funko Pops. What's going to happen when Funko Pop? And look, I love Funko Pops.
I'd like to know who distributes them. Get them some comics.
Yeah,
if they were doing, if Funko was doing, if I was in charge and had my druthers about it, and I had any kind of say with the bigger ones too, especially the big 2 Funkos, I want one of those little comic books, like a replica of a first appearance of that character in every single toy. We saw so much more marketing like that back in the day when these companies were kind of really trying to compete with each other and get those readers and get them not only to buy the toys or the shirts or whatever, but also to read the comics and learn about the characters. We see way more of that back then than we do now. And now they're in a position where they have parent companies, especially Marvel at this point. DC's been with Warner Brothers for forever. But now they're on the ropes too because of everything else. But Marvel right now, they're in such a great position where they could do something awesome like that, but they're not doing anything like that. It just seems like one hand is not washing the other, and that's kind of affecting everything. And I've seen these conversations happen a lot where it's like, well, you're indie, you're not part of so-and-so, so you shouldn't care. Well, the sad truth is that comic shops primarily order mostly from the big 2. So take one of them out of the equation and you're looking at probably half the shops gone within 6 months. And that's less shops that we can sell to, less people we can sell to overall, because even though you get customers that go to the store thinking they'll find an Alterna book, and then eventually maybe they order directly from us, you eventually lose that customer in general, because they have nowhere to go to with comics. They're completely out of the loop. They don't care anymore. They've moved on to something else, because we're not just competing with each other in comics. We're competing with everything else. So the whole industry needs to wake up this year. Otherwise, it's pretty disastrous. We're hitting a point of no return.
Do you think the spec market is growing in because I feel like in the past year or so, I've been hearing at my own LCS a bit more and more with the spec market, people wanting that cover, people looking at the, you see them go to the guys will get to the comic shop as soon as they open, go to the rack, pull out their phone, start looking up prices for various covers. Do you think the spec market is coming back? And if so, would that help the comic shops?
I would love to see the spec market come back in a way that, hey, I heard something happens in this issue. I want to buy it up. not, oh, they got that variant out. They got, that thing.
Yeah.
I got to pick that up. I want to see comics return back to being worth something because something occurs within them that matters and has significance. Now, you can't have significance if you keep rebooting your universe. You can't have significance if these characters don't matter and have that real feel like they're here to stay.
That's like we were talking about Alfred dying in Tom King's Batman. We were talking about that last week. And it's like, well, when are they going to bring him back and how? That's the conversation. Yeah. The conversation is not Alfred's dead. Oh my gosh, this is huge. The conversation is when and how are they going to bring him back? Because nothing matters.
In time for the next Batman movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I like when and Boogie said I had no emotion. But what issue of Batman was it where he calls Lucius? I think it was Lucius and mistakes him for Alfred at first. And I laughed, and I'm pretty sure Batman thinking of Alfred when he was calling Lucius, me laughing was not the response they wanted. But the fact that's what I did because it did not matter to me.
Yeah, there's no weight to it.
I can still get lost in a story, but then when I sit back and look at it, you're right that there is no weight to it. But so what's the future of comic books? What's the future of comic book shops? What happens when Funko Pops aren't cool anymore? There are I shouldn't say our generations. They're the current generation's Beanie Baby. They're gonna fade out and disappear. They've lasted way longer than I thought they would. So then what happens? Do we find something else to keep comic shops in business? Or do you think they just keep dying out? And then what happens to comic books?
Yeah, I think shops really need to start pivoting this year. Many already are, which is great. I've talked to, I constantly talk to those 50 to 60 shops that order from us all the time. And even just the local shops in the area. And a lot of them are starting to organize their stores by genre. So it becomes easier for not just their current customers to find books, but also for new customers to find books. You go in there and, you don't ever read comics. You don't know what the heck Alterna is from Image, from DC or Marvel. You have no idea. You think, oh, does Marvel publish all of these? You're that level of a new reader. Well, if you walk in and you go, yeah, well, I know I like action. I know I like horror. I know I like sci-fi. If your shop is organized in those ways, they can go over there and discover those kinds of books without having to, organizing by publisher doesn't matter. Organizing alphabetically doesn't really matter once you know everything, you know everything. So it's so important and key that shops start organizing in those ways to really make it easy and accessible for everyone. Having different features in stores too. A lot of these already do it where they have recommendations of, if you like this, try this. Here's what so-and-so's pick of the week is. All those little things help. Comic book club, getting that kind of stuff, along with the gaming activities, also getting stuff that encourages comic book reading, having workshops in the store, utilizing your store space to not just make it that it's a shelf for a publisher or a piece of merchandise, but also utilizing your space so that it's also a place for your community to be a part and go into that store and go, hey, I love spending time in here. My kids learning how to draw in here. You guys have a comic creator who's local that's maybe teaching them something every weekend, or maybe making a mini Comic Con out of your store every weekend or whatever it is. You can have all kinds of things in your shop, not just viewing your shop as a shelf for me or Marvel or whoever. Is the key for comic shops to really succeed. Because right now, if you're just going to be like, well, I've got a shop and we've got shelves and it's displayed nice and here are the things that you can buy. What's different from you from any other online digital presence? You need that interaction. You need that personal touch. You need that community aspect of it.
And that's what I think a lot of shops, and I know you recently had a video on this, but a lot of shops try to use Free Comic Book Day for kind of that platform or catapult, kind of to get those new people in the shop, to try to hook them, show them what they have, show them the environment. You can come here, you can game, you can read comics, but that's what they use Free Comic Book Day for. And I agree. I think they should not just Free Comic Book Day, have events.
Yeah.
That makes
make
a
your
lot of
store
sense.
a place to go to for all kinds of stuff, as opposed to just a place to go to on Wednesday to pick up the new books. Even having sales. There's so many stores that don't really have sales. There's stores that I've been to that they won't have even a Black Friday sale or a holiday sale or even a grand opening sale. It's strange kind of stuff. So everyone needs to do their part. Publishers can do better, creators can do better, retailers can do better, distribution can do better. We can all do better. And we all have to find these ways where we can shore up a bit here and there and really do our best, because no one else is going to come along and save a dying industry. It doesn't look attractive right now. If you're someone looking to open up a store, let's say, I don't think, oh, I'll open up a comic book store is the thing that would pop into somebody's head right now. So that's something too that's going to become more and more difficult. We're seeing more publishers enter the game, but we're not seeing more retailers enter the game, which is something we really need. So there's a lot of different little problems occurring, but there's tiny solutions here and there that we can build upon. And I know a lot of stores are doing their best. A lot of publishers are starting to try to shake things up, but it's a mountain right now to climb.
Where do you think the disconnect is between? I mean, look what Marvel's done with the MCU. Look how many people are going into theaters and watching these movies. You see them talking about them on Facebook. They're talking about these characters. And you can go into a comic shop every Wednesday and read these stories. For a long time, I've only been reading comic books for probably 5 years, because I thought comic books, it was all capes and superheroes. And then just to talk about Alterna, the Wicked Righteous.
All kinds of stuff, yeah.
Yes. Sonatas, Go West. There are so many stories out there that aren't capes and superheroes. Lock and Key, that's the big one now because it's on Netflix. Everybody's talking about it. Yeah. That's the book that got me into a comic shop, because I was like, what is this? This is not capes and superheroes. How do we get people that are talking about comic book properties into a comic shop wanting to read comics? Can we do that? Do you think we can do that?
I think it really has to be a concerted effort. I think we all have to, again, as publisher, retailer, distribution, we all have to unite and realize, okay, look, if the publisher markets the hell out of a book, but there's no way that the retailer could really get it in a timely fashion or an easy fashion or just even be aware of it, then the publisher's marketing is for nothing. If the distributor can't really get this book to a retailer for whatever other reason, because a publisher maybe isn't doing their part, their whole part in it is a distributor doesn't matter. And if a retailer can't get anything, then they suffer as well. So everyone needs to be firing on the same kind of pace here, because we're all on different pages. We all kind of want to play like the blame game of this is what's occurring, because I know obviously there's things to go around and blame, but there's been parts where I look at it and I go, whoa, boy, we could have done something better with that. We really kind of dropped the ball on it, and let's not do that again. Let's not make the same mistake twice. So there's all kinds of things that all of us can do. But that's the thing is that, so let's say Lock and Key, if a shop is not even paying attention, let's say, to the fact that that's going to be a show and that this is a book people are going to want, they're going to miss out on those sales. If distribution isn't getting those reorders in, shops are going to miss out on those sales. If the publisher isn't printing more of them, the publisher, the shop, distribution, they're going to miss out on those sales. Readers are going to miss out. There's not going to be new readers from these things. So it's the same kind of thing going on with this sort of stuff. I would love to see, personally, I'd love to see these dollar reprints that are so great from these other publishers. I'd love to see them branch out into Dollar Tree, into Five Below, into these other kinds of places where, it's not a new comic. Sure, it's not a new comic, but to someone who's never read comics before, it's a new comic. Mm-hmm. So, if you're a kid and you're just in Dollar Tree, you're shopping around with your parents or whatever it is, and you just, oh, what's that? It's a comic. Is it going to speak to every single kid? No, but if that comic wasn't there, that kid would not know about it. We're coming to a point where the whole, if the tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound sort of thing? Yeah, it still makes a sound, but if no one's around, then no one heard it. No one can describe what that sounds like. So if there's a book made and it's out there and it's on the shelf and people are aware of it, that's great. But if a book is made and there's there's no chance it's getting out there. It's never going to be on your local store's shelf. Chances are you're not going to know about it unless you're very, very active already in the comic community, following certain publishers, following certain creators, being in tune on social media. So all these parts, they come into play. So it's the one hand washing the other thing. We need more of that syncing up within comics.
Yeah. I talk about it all the time on this show. As a kid, I never stepped foot in a comic shop. Never had a clue where a comic shop was. But when we went to Ingles to buy groceries, and I saw Archie Digest on a little rack at the checkout, I would ask my mom, "Can I have that?" She would get it, and I would read it. And that's the comics I read as a kid, was Archie Digest, because it was easily accessible.
Because it's there. You see it.
Exactly. So I think that would be a huge thing.
It needs to be more of a team effort of the distribution, the shops, and everyone working more together, looking out for each other rather than looking out for themselves.
And we can't have this field of dreams mindset where, well, we made the thing, people will find us. No, we have to find the people. We have to be proactive about that. We had newsstand distribution for about 3 years. We've quit on it this year only because there's a gaggle of problems with newsstand because of the fact that it's pretty much just us. So it's kind of hard for us to have any leverage on the situation when they go, well, it's just you, really. But if other publishers were in there, if every publisher was in there with a title or two, we would have all these comics in a lot of different places, and all that kind of stuff would funnel back to the comic shops, because you'd find these new releases on newsstand because they don't really keep back issues. And it would be the same system that took place years ago when you missed out on what came before. And you're like, where do I find this? Where do I find this? Well, now you know where to find it. It's at your local comic shop. But we don't have that conduit anymore that leads to that.
Yeah. Well, I want to go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to ask. I wanted to ask real quick. This is kind of a tangent of what we've been talking about. But I don't want you, because you don't. The owner of McDonald's doesn't want people to know maybe he goes to Burger King. But if you have time, are you reading anything right now, or are there any comics out there that have your eye that people should be checking this out?
I love digging through back issue bins. That's what I love at this point. I've tried looking at a lot of the new releases. Between submissions, we get almost 200 submissions a month.
Wow.
And then just everything else that involves getting the Alterna books out. Every single Alterna book that I publish is a book that I would read. There's not. I know some publishers, they do the thing where they're like, "Well, yeah, what's this? This is Blood Realm. I don't get this." But someone probably does. Let's put it out. I don't like it, but someone probably does. I don't do that at all. I love every single book that we have at Alterna. Those are the books I read. Those are the books I enjoy. And other than that, I love digging through the back issue bins. That's usually where you'll find me at a shop. The new stuff, like I said before, between the price tag and then sometimes the story, although it's kind of funny sometimes to see comics pop up and I'm like, oh, that came through Alterna and I passed on that.
Wow. That's kind of neat though.
But yeah, I'm always glad though that at least, they got picked up elsewhere, which is kind of a testament to the way comics are right now, is that it's the best time to be published right now, but also the worst time because everyone is publishing everyone. So you have to be more competitive. You have to have a bit of that fighting spirit in you to want to stand out.
So when you go to that back issue bin, what are you looking at?
I'm always looking through anything with Art Adams, anything classic X-Men related, anything with Spider-Man, some old Vertigo. Oh man, that's like one of the old Vertigo Fantagraphics, and a little bit of classic Marvel and DC was kind of what made me want to create my own comics. Mm-hmm. So all that kind of stuff. I love that stuff.
So big on Sandman and stuff like that.
Yeah, Sandman, Hellblazer, love all that kind of stuff. And even some of the books I had as a kid from Now Comics, they're obviously no longer around. I loved a lot of those licensed titles too, like Fright Night and Real Ghostbusters and stuff like that. And even early Valiant was always a blast.
Well, I want to. We said we were going to go an hour, so we got to wrap this thing up. But I just want to reiterate one more time. I put the link in the live chat all throughout the conversation tonight. But I want to encourage you guys to go check this out. The 2020 subscription, where you can get for $134. We talked about this just this week on ComicCast, how most of us are spending $50 a week on new comic books. $50. So for $134, less than 3 weeks worth of comics at your local comic shop, you can get a 2020 subscription to Alterna Comics. And look, I mean, all the titles are here. Blood Realm, we talked about that tonight. And I was excited to see the 12 volume 2 is a thing. I'm so excited for that. And I have to mention Downcast. It's in there, right? Is it on the list?
Yeah,
there it is. There it is right there.
And December.
Such a fan of Clint. I love his success. I was so excited to see that announcement that he was going to be publishing through you guys, because I think, I talked about it with him on here a couple of weeks ago. I think it's huge because I think it's two different audiences. That crowdfunding versus getting his book into comic shops is a huge deal, and I'm very excited for him and for you guys to have him on board. He's a very talented guy.
Yeah,
and if you don't know what to get, and like me, can't make up your mind, it came out on a Wednesday. It's perfect.
I like that that's included here with the subscription too. But guys, check it out. The link is in the chat. But Peter, we appreciate you coming on. I didn't even prep for this. I was like, I don't even know what we're going to talk about. Before you jumped in the green room, Adam's like, what are we going to talk about? I said, I'm just going to get Peter going and we'll let him talk. That's all I got to do.
Everyone that ever watches anything on Alterna Comics Live knows I could do a half hour on a tangent, and I don't know why they enjoy it, but they do for the most part. So hey,
I'll watch it
because you're knowledgeable and entertaining, man. You're a good dude. Yeah. You're just a nice dude.
Oh man, yeah, I would love actually, and I love when you were talking about the printing stuff. I love that behind the scenes stuff. If you have any stories of conventions, I love the behind the scenes convention stories. Like, just because a lot of wacky things happen at comic conventions to creators, and I love hearing those stories.
Oh, the craziest one that I saw was at last year's Terrificon. This was pretty nuts. I'm in the morning, walking through the aisles, getting ready to go to where we're set up, and I see like the setup of another vendor, a retailer, I believe, starting to shake a little bit and move back and forth. They're shirtless and pantless on the floor, rolling around, trying to get clothes on. I'd say he's probably like in his 60s. And I was like, I don't even know what's happening right now, but only at a convention can you find this experience. So,
what? I don't even.
I saw it and I moved along quick.
End of story. You're going to go live. Aren't you doing a thing on your YouTube channel now? You're going to go live every night at 9:00, and we disrupted that for you tonight.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Everyone on the channel is so forgiving, and they're used to me not necessarily sticking through. Oh, I'm going to stick through it though this time. We'll be live tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, etc. But yeah, a half-hour show live every night at 9.
Check that out, guys. The link is in the description for Peter's YouTube channel, and I love the commentary that you do over comment. That's a great idea. A lot of good content, a lot of knowledge. That's why, like I said, I just wanted to pick your brain. I enjoy somebody bringing a different point of view than what we have on this podcast. But we appreciate you coming on. Check out Peter. All the links are in the description for his social media, his YouTube channel, all that good stuff. Go check out the AllStar 1-year subscription. Peter, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.